We mentioned this yesterday on Tuesday, CNBC, Tuesday morning. Donald Trump, in an interview, mentioned that after his presidency, he was told by his longtime banker, J.P. Morgan, that he was no longer welcome there. That he had 30 days to remove, and he claims that he had over $1 billion cash.
Oh my God.
In various accounts with JP Morgan, and he'd been with them for decades. He then tried to take his business across the street to Bank of America, and he named Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan specifically, inciting the fact that they rejected his business too. And he says it was because of pressure from the Biden administration. Well, yesterday, it just so happens, the next day, the aforementioned Brian Moynihan, CEO of Bank of America, was on the same program, CNBC, and the host asked him about it, and Mr. Moynihan actually confirmed these details. Take a listen.
The president's after the right thing, which is the laws, rules, and regulations around our industry became used to cause things to happen. It's whether it's WMAL, whether it's KYC, whether it's reputational risk, and you heard Tim Scott quote about it. It is right to go look at these rules, because at the end of the day, they are causing decisions to be made that can be looked at in retrospect and made differently. We should get these rules right.
Okay, there you go. So these rules caused things to happen. In retrospect, they can cause things that, he's trying to be as political as possible by avoiding
that
the fact.
passive voice, man. It reminds me of my kids when something breaks, something falls, and they're like, it just happened.
It happened.
It just happened.
The rules caused these things to happen. Understand, the rules were in place well before Joe Biden became president. What happened was the administration put pressure on the banks to employ the rules. And by the way, he referred to the BSA and KYC. That's Bank Secrecy Act, Know Your Customer Act. These are laws that are put in place, rules put in place for banks to operate that are anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism financing.
I don't know how much of. I mean, okay, I'm not a truther about the fact that it's Biden, but like, did they not want to do this? I don't think they had to have their arms twisted.
I will tell you right now, post January 6th, they leaned on a lot, because Trump's the high profile guy, but it happened to everyday Americans. If you were associated with MAGA, January 6th. This happened to a lot of people, I think. Let's ask the expert. Will Hild is the executive director of Consumers Research. And Will, you've been talking about the debanking move in a huge way. You tell me, do you think that the Biden administration did this overtly to try to X out Trump and other people associated with Trump?
I think it's a yes to both. There's no question that banking regulators were leaning on the banking industry to punish their political enemies. That said, this goes back to even before the Biden administration, even before the original Trump administration. There's some Operation Choke Point under the Obama administration, where the Obama administration was getting the banking industry to basically debank politically disfavored industries, even things like fireworks manufacturers and sellers. So this is a long road how we got to this. That said, I don't really buy this passive voice from Brian Moynihan and Jamie Dimon. These guys were collaborators in this, and they were happy to go along with it. So there is fault on both sides, not just the regulators, but the banks who are more than willing to participate.
So one of my favorite statistics, and I talk about it every time I host, is that the majority of people, when they were interviewed in exit polling in Pennsylvania, when they said they voted to save democracy, they were Donald Trump voters. And this is the kind of stuff, this banana republic stuff, that pushed me over the edge to vote for Trump over broken glass. That all of that long-winded way to say, I don't think this is just hitting Donald Trump. How many Americans were facing this and they had none of the resources, both, political capital and money, all these things that Donald Trump did? How many people are they debanking here?
Well, that's part of the issue, is they won't tell us, because when there were case after case after case of debanking that seemed obvious, politically motivated, they would claim that it was actually the KYC regulations, the Know Your Customer regulations that we have in place to prevent the financing of terrorism. Oh, this had nothing. This is actually because there's some paperwork you didn't fill out correctly, or, we did a background check and we're not allowed to tell you what came back and why you're not allowed to have a bank account. So they would hide behind the anti-terrorism measures. And so they really never admitted that there was debanking. This is a bombshell for Brian Moynihan to basically admit that it was completely politically motivated, the reasons that President Trump was debanked. Because up until recently, they were just claiming that, we can't tell you why, but it has nothing to do with debanking. This is definitely not politically motivated. So this is a huge revelation.
Sorry about that. Stephen Miller, the deputy White House chief of staff, has announced that the Treasury Secretary is in the midst of working on not only new regulations and new rules for banks to work under, but also some sort of backlash, cracking down on banks who have done this in the past, some sort of, retribution. They should pay a penalty for doing this, or are they going to be able to say, hey, listen, we were just, adhering to the rules and we were told to do this?
Well, see, that's the issue, is that the banks are being a little too cute by half there by saying that it was just following orders. Okay, there is nothing in the banking regulations that allows the government to punish its political enemies. The only way that is able to happen is when the banks collaborate with a political administration to do so. They have to be willing to do it. If they were to say, actually, you're not allowed to tell us to debank the president or the former president of the United States or any conservative, you guys can go pound sand. As soon as they had said that, it would have been over. But because Brian Moynihan is one of the wokest CEOs in America, and Jamie Dimon is one of the wokest CEOs in America, he's just really a liar and tries to hide it. They were more than willing to do so.
If I could, Will, I think a lot of the original sin here also goes back to the FBI under Christopher Wray and James Comey continuing to repeat this lie that the number one terrorist threat domestically in America were conservative white men, those racist MAGA types. Because as soon as the FBI says these people are terrorists, of course a bank acting responsibly doesn't want to do business with a terrorist.
I mean, to some extent that's true, but you got to remember that during the J6 investigations, banks were willing to hand over the location data from their own customers' phones. So if you had like a Wells Fargo app on your phone, for example, they were drawing a circle and saying, like, I'll give you all the location data of anyone that was anywhere near Washington, D.C. without a warrant. Okay? So This isn't the FBI saying, here we went to a court. Right, They were more than happy to sell out their own customers because they were politically disfavored. So This isn't obviously an issue where there was political pressure applied by regulators, but the bank should not be that passive voice that you noted, Bethany. That's an insane cop-out for an active role that they played in persecuting their own customers who happen to be conservative.
So more to come on this topic, you're predicting.
I hope so. I hope this EO is an absolute devastation. And for one thing, we've gotten way too much concentration in the banking sector. The only reason this is possible is because Dodd-Frank basically cut off the creation of new banks. It is slowed to an absolute trickle. And so we've had massive concentration. So the big five, Wells Fargo, Citi, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, they're basically like 50% or 40% of the entire banking market in the world at this point. And certainly in the nation. And that's part of the reason they have so much power. We need to break that up. I hate to go back to you got to go back to the regulations and create more free market, competition. I think they ought to follow the law, whether they're a big player or a small player. But adding some more competition would certainly curtail this. And that's something that I hope the EO punishes the wrongdoers, and maybe we find a way to create some new competitor banks that people can move to that aren't insane.
Hey, you with your radical ideas, follow the law. Unbelievable. Radical. Thank you, Will Hild, Consumer Research. Always a great guest. Don't be a stranger. We got to have you back more often.